Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we distill the essential, fascinating, and sometimes shocking truths you need to know from our curated sources. Today, we are undertaking a massive deep dive into the life of Sir Charles Spencer Chaplin Jr., a figure whose career arc is so dramatic it almost beggars belief.
It really is. It's a story of just these astronomical heights and then these crushing lows. We're talking about a man who spanned 75 years of cultural history, from his childhood in Victorian London right up until his death in 1977.
And the core of it all, it isn't just the longevity, it's this incredible tension between his artistic independence, which was absolute, and the devastating political cost he paid for it.
Exactly. We all know him instantly as the Tramp, that icon.
That universally recognizable figure, the baggy pants, the tight coat, the cane, the little mustache. It's a walking study in contradictions.
And that contradiction was rooted in his life. I mean, this is the definitive rags to riches tale. He was born into absolute grinding destitution and became one of the world's highest paid people by his mid-20s.
And he fought Hollywood for complete artistic control, and he won.
He did. But that very independence allowed him to speak out politically. And that, combined with some scandalous personal choices, resulted in the country that made him a global megastar, literally revoking his right to return.
So our sources today, they include extensive biographies, critical film analyses, and archival material detailing all these controversies. Our mission is to trace his incredible ascent, examine his groundbreaking methods as a complete filmmaker.
And we mean complete. Writing, directing, producing, composing, starring.
And then really understand the seismic political and legal battles of the 1940s that forced him out of America.
We're going to see how the trauma of his early life shaped the Tramp, why he fought a war against sound film for a decade, and how he weaponized his art and even his own exile into social satire.
This sounds like a masterclass in cinematic power and the ultimate price of that power. Okay, let's unpack this. The story has to start with the rags, because the depth of Chaplin's childhood poverty is often, understated. It wasn't just low income.
No, it was a devastating systemic destitution. And it became the wellspring for the entire emotional core of the Tramp. He was born Charles Spencer Chaplin Jr. in London, April 16, 1889. His parents, Hannah Chaplin and Charles Chaplin Sr., they were music hall entertainers.
Right, so performance was in the family?
It was, but the family unit was completely broken. The instability was immediate and it was continuous. His father, Charles Sr., was a successful singer, but he was almost totally absent.
And he died very young, right?
Very young, 38 years old, from severe alcoholism. So that left Hannah in this state of chronic financial distress, trying to support her sons with whatever odd jobs she could find.
One biographer noted something I found really chilling, that Chaplin didn't even recognize he was experiencing a crisis because their whole life was just continual crisis.
That phrase says it all. It was a constant state of near starvation. And the ultimate result of that was the workhouse, a truly chilling Victorian institution.
And our sources say he was sent to the Lambeth workhouse twice before he even turned 9.
Exactly. The workhouse was where the state housed the destitute, and it was designed to be terrifying. They operated on the principle of separating families to break people's spirits.
So he was separated from his mother and brother.
He was. And after the workhouse, he had a stint at the Central London District School for Paupers. These are basically institutional barracks for poor children. He remembered it as a forlorn existence.
So this isn't just a tough childhood. This is deep institutional trauma.
And it was only compounded by the mental health crisis his mother was facing. Hannah struggled terribly. In 1898, when Charlie was just 9, she was committed to the Cane Hill Mental Asylum.
What was the cause of that?
It was diagnosed as psychosis, but our sources say it was attributed to the dual pressures of a syphilis infection and just profound malnutrition from years of poverty.
Yeah.
The stress was overwhelming.
And she was in and out of care.
She was for a time. But her mental health collapsed permanently in 1905 when Chaplin was 16. He had to escort her to the infirmary himself. She remained in care for the rest of her life until 1928. It left this deep autobiographical scar.
And that's the connection right there. These scars, the poverty, the separation from his mother, they provide the immense pathos that elevates the Tramp beyond just a slapstick character.
That is the key distinction. Other early film comedians were just about the physical farce. Chaplin introduced a real bleeding humanity. His films are consistently about the poor, about greed, about loss. These themes came directly from his life.
Yet, even as his home life was falling apart, he was starting his performing career. Almost by accident, right?
It was. He recalled his first amateur appearance was at age 5. He had to fill in for his mother on stage one night when her voice failed and the audience, booed her off.
So a 5-year-old just walks out on stage.
He did, entertained the crowd with a popular song, and they showered him with coins. That little taste of success, it just propelled him. By age 9, he joined the 8 Lancashire Lads, a clog dancing troupe.
He basically gave up on school pretty early.
Completely abandoned it by 13. At 14, he landed a huge role as Billy the Page Boy in a touring production of Sherlock Holmes.
And that got him to the West End with William Gillette, the original Holmes.
Which was invaluable training. From there, he joined the Fred Carnot Company. Now, Carnot's troupe was the most prestigious comedy company in England. They were famous for creating comedy without dialogue.
The perfect training ground for a silent film star.
The absolute perfect training ground. Carnot was skeptical at first, called Chaplin a pale, puny, sullen-looking youngster. But Chaplin had this natural genius for pantomime.
And it was with the Carnot Company that he first came to America.
Yes, on a tour of the vaudeville circuit. His hit role was this character called the inebriate swell. He was already getting incredible reviews, being called one of the best pantomime artists ever seen here. And on his second American tour in late 1912, Hollywood finally noticed.
So 6 months into that second tour, a scout from Keystone Studios offers him a contract.
They needed a replacement for a comedian named Fred Mace. Chaplin was. He was hesitant. He found Keystone's style, which was run by Max Sennett, to be just chaotic slapstick. A crude melange of rough and rumble was his phrase.
But the lure of film was too strong?
It was a new medium, a new art form. He signed for $150 a week in September 1913.
He starts work in early 1914, but it's for his second film that the persona that would define his entire life is conceived. How did he put together the look of the Tramp?
He detailed it pretty meticulously. He said he just went into the wardrobe and wanted a costume that was full of contradictions.
Contradictions in every element.
Every single one. The pants had to be baggy, but the coat had to be tight. The shoes had to be enormous. He wore them on the wrong feet. But the hat, the derby, had to be small.
And the mustache.
That was a stroke of genius. He picked a small toothbrush mustache because it added a bit of age and character, but it didn't hide his facial expressions, which were key to his comedy.
He said the moment he put it all on, he just felt the character.
He did. He said he began to know the Tramp. Sensing his melancholy, but also his sort of defiant dignity, the character just emerged, fully formed.
And that character debuted in kid auto races at Venice in February 1914.
Yes, and while his first few films were pretty standard Keystone stuff, he started clashing with the directors almost immediately. He felt their chaotic style didn't allow for character or pathos.
He wanted to slow things down.
He wanted character-focused comedy, which was a radical idea at the time.
So how did his boss, Max Sennett, react to this? I mean, they were churning these things out.
Sennett was a businessman. And after Chaplin's 11th film, he realized he couldn't fire him. The demand from the public for more Chaplin films was it was explosive.
But box office was talking.
Louder than anyone. So Sennett gave him a chance to direct. His next film, Caught in the Rain, Chaplin was so confident he promised to pay the $1,500 production cost himself if it failed.
Of course, a huge success.
A major success. And from then on, he directed almost every short film he appeared in at a grueling pace of about one a week. That Keystone period, rough as it was, it proved that his style worked.
And that immediate success gave him massive leverage when his contract was up. Sennett wouldn't meet his demand of $1,000 a week.
He thought it was an absurd amount of money for a comedian. But the S&A Film Manufacturing Company, they disagreed completely.
They offered him $1,250 a week.
Plus a $10,000 signing bonus. Unheard of in late 1914. It was a revolutionary contract that basically gave an actor financial power over the studio for the first time.
And this move to S&A is where the Tramp really starts to change.
Precisely. At Keystone, the character had been described as mean, crude, and brutish. At S&A, Chaplin finally had some breathing room. He slowed the pace to focus on quality and dramatic development.
So the character becomes more gentle, more romantic.
Exactly. The real turning point was the 1915 film, The Tramp. And this is where he really introduces pathos into comedy, which was his great innovation.
Pathos, the quality that evokes pity or sadness.
Right. While he was making the bank in 1915, he gave it a genuinely sad ending, which defied all comedic convention. That shot of the Tramp walking away, lonely but still defiant, that became his signature.
And critics saw this as a move toward real cinematic art.
Absolutely. And this success triggered one of the earliest global cultural phenomena, We're talking about Chaplinitis.
Chaplinitis, what did that look like?
It was inescapable. By 1915, shops were filled with Chaplin merchandise. Dolls, cigars, perfumes, you name it. He was in comics, he was in songs. A journalist wrote that it had spread across America like wildfire. He was the film industry's first true international star.
An unprecedented level of adoration. And that leads to another, even more astronomical contract in 1916, this time with Mutual Film.
And here the numbers just get staggering. Mutual signed the 26-year-old Chaplin for $670,000 a year.
Let's put that in perspective. In 1916, the President of the United States made $75,000.
So Chaplin was earning nearly 10 times the president's salary. He was one of the highest paid people in the world, period. The studio president just said, the public wants Chaplin and will pay for him.
And those Mutual years were incredibly productive. He called them the happiest of his career.
They were. He made 12 short films in 18 months, and they included masterpieces like The Immigrant and Easy Street. These films were celebrated for their structure and their emotional depth.
But here's where it gets really interesting. How did this immense fame survive the backdrop of World War I and all the personal scrutiny?
Well, the scrutiny was intense. He was attacked pretty heavily in the British media for not enlisting.
But he did register for the American draft, didn't he?
He did in 1917, but neither country ever called him up. Probably because his fame was seen as a bigger morale booster than his service would be.
And despite the bad press, his popularity with the public, especially the troops, it never wavered.
It was untouchable. Harper's Weekly said he was a part of the common language of almost every country. His fame gave him the power to command total control over his future.
That unprecedented popularity bought him the ultimate prize, absolute independence. After Mutual, he signs with First National for 8 films, guaranteeing him $1 million.
And he immediately uses that money to build his own studio. Charlie Chaplin Studios finished in 1918 right off Sunset Boulevard.
A fortress of creative freedom. He now had the money, the location, and total control.
And his films immediately reflect that ambition. But the real industry shaker was in 1919, with the founding of United Artists.
Co-founding a distribution company with Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, and D.W. Griffith. This was a revolutionary act.
It completely sidestepped the studio system. United Artists allowed these 4 megastars to personally fund their own pictures, retaining 100% of the creative and financial control.
So they decided the budgets, the schedule, the final cut, everything.
It was the single most important step in establishing the filmmaker as an auteur, an autonomous artist, rather than just an employee.
And his first feature-length film under this new freedom was intensely personal. The Kid in 1921.
The Kid ran 68 minutes, and it proved that comedy could sustain that length while tackling really heavy subjects like poverty and child separation.
And it had deep autobiographical roots for him.
Crucially, yes, it was made shortly after the death of his own infant son, Norman, who died just 3 days after birth. So the film became this form of artistic sublimation, with the Tramp becoming a caretaker to the young Jackie Coogan. It was a massive global success.
But the public had very clear expectations of him. His next film, A Woman of Paris, in 1923, was an attempt to step away from the Tramp.
He wanted to direct a serious drama to showcase his leading lady, Edna Purviance. He only appeared in a brief, uncredited cameo, and the critics, they adored it, praised its nuance and sophisticated direction.
But the public hated it.
It bombed. Commercially, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
The public wanted Chaplin the character, not Chaplin the director of dramas. He was so hurt by the failure that he just withdrew it from circulation.
A harsh lesson about the power of his own persona.
A very harsh lesson. So he returned to form with what he called the film he wanted to be remembered by, The Gold Rush, in 1925.
An epic comedy based on, of all things, the tragic Donner Party.
He wanted to make an epic comedy out of grim subject matter. And he went for massive scale, huge sets, 600 extras, shooting on location in the Nevada mountains.
It cost nearly $1 million, which was a monumental sum. But it gave us some of the most iconic scenes in cinema history.
It really did. It became one of the highest-grossing silent films ever. We all remember the scene where he boils his leather boot and eats it like a gourmet meal.
Treating the laces like spaghetti.
Or the dance of the rolls. These are moments where physical comedy and pathos just align perfectly. It's pure cinematic magic.
But right after this huge triumph, his personal life just completely goes off the rails. We're talking about the Lita Gray scandal.
The mid-1920s were a period of severe emotional turmoil for him. This was his second marriage in 1924. He was forced by Gray's pregnancy just like his first marriage.
And the age difference was controversial.
Very. She was 16, he was 35. But the marriage was also deeply unhappy, and the public divorce in 1927 became headline news across the country.
It was incredibly sensationalized.
To an extreme degree. Gray's divorce complaint was leaked, and it was full of accusations of infidelity, abuse, and these shocking claims of perverted sexual desires. Chaplin was reportedly on the verge of a nervous breakdown.
And the financial cost was huge.
A $600,000 settlement, the largest awarded by a U.S. court at the time. The stress was so bad that it completely crippled his work on his next film, The Circus.
Production had to be suspended for 10 months.
It did. And even though the film was a success and earned him a Special Academy Award, he forever associated it with the pain of that period.
By the time The Circus came out, Hollywood was changing forever. The Jazz Singer had premiered and sound film was taking over. But Chaplin was deeply cynical about it.
He wasn't just resisting sound, he was waging a one-man war against it. He felt talkies lacked artistry, and crucially, he feared that giving the Tramp a voice would destroy his universal appeal.
Because he didn't need translation.
Exactly. Giving him an English or American accent would limit him. So his defiance culminated in City Lights in 1931, a completely silent film, released 4 years into the sound era.
An incredible gamble.
An astonishing gamble. The production was a 21-month saga of pathological perfectionism. He said he worked himself into a neurotic state of wanting perfection.
And he used the new sound technology, but only to record his own musical score.
Yes, which he composed entirely himself. And the film was a stunning success. It grossed over $3 million. But its artistic legacy is even greater. The critic James A.J. called the final scene the greatest piece of acting in movies.
He proved that visual storytelling could still triumph.
He did.
Yeah.
Now, after City Lights, he took a long break. He traveled for 16 months, and that trip really opened his eyes to the growing global turmoil.
Including a foiled assassination plot in Japan.
That's right. Ultranationalists planned to kill him to try and provoke a war with the U.S. It was only foiled because he decided to play golf instead of attending the reception.
He comes back home deeply troubled by the Great Depression and what he's seeing with labor conditions.
He was worried that machinery and capitalism were just going to create permanent unemployment. And those anxieties became the foundation for Modern Times in 1936.
Which he called a satire on certain phases of our industrial life.
It was. The film follows the Tramp as he navigates factories and unemployment, and it still maintained his commitment to visual comedy. He used sound effects, but almost no intelligible dialogue.
Almost. Except for the one unforgettable moment where the Tramp finally speaks.
Yes. He's forced to sing in a cafe, forgets the lyrics, and just sings this hilarious, completely gibberish song.
It was his final artistic defiance. The Tramp communicates, but not with actual restrictive words.
Exactly. And that film marked his definitive shift from romantic comedy to being a socially conscious artist. He was getting ready to use his platform for direct political commentary, a move that would ultimately destroy his standing in America.
Right, so the political messages really come to the forefront in the 1940s, and this just unleashes a storm of controversy that shatters his popularity in the U.S.
The spark was this really unsettling historical coincidence. Chaplin was disturbed by the rise of nationalism, but the key inspiration for his next film was the uncanny resemblance between himself and Adolf Hitler.
They were born just 4 days apart.
April 1889. Both rose from poverty and obscurity, and both had that same distinct mustache.
And that parallel gives us The Great Dictator in 1940. This was his first true sound film.
He finally gave in because he felt the political message against fascism had to be delivered with dialogue. He knew the risk, but he felt, as he wrote, that Hitler must be laughed at.
He plays two roles, the dictator, Adenoid Hinkle, and a persecuted Jewish barber.
Which was a subtle retort to the Nazi rumor that Chaplin himself was Jewish.
But the film ends with the most controversial choice of his career, that 5-minute speech.
He drops the character completely, looks right at the camera, and delivers this powerful plea against war and fascism. It broke the fourth wall, and it forever linked his star image to polarizing political causes.
And while figures like Churchill and Roosevelt loved it,
it made him an immediate political target for right-wing and isolationist groups in the U.S.
And that political scrutiny just intensifies exponentially, providing the perfect cover for a campaign to destroy him.
And this campaign was rooted in a personal scandal involving an actress named Joan Barry.
They had a brief affair, and then she claimed she was pregnant with his child.
The timing was critical. J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, was already deeply suspicious of Chaplin's progressive politics and his support for the Soviet Union.
So Hoover saw an opportunity here.
He used the scandal as leverage. The FBI launched a full-on smear campaign, feeding damaging information to anti-communist gossip columnists to ruin his public image.
They didn't just stop at gossip, though. They went after him legally.
They used a truly archaic law, the Mann Act, from 1910. It prohibits transporting women across state lines for immoral purposes.
It was an anti-prostitution law.
Essentially. And Chaplin was indicted on 4 charges. It was an absurd prosecution.
What was the real threat to him?
If he was found guilty, he could have faced up to 23 years in federal prison. Now, he was acquitted, but the case dominated the headlines for months. The FBI had succeeded in publicly crucifying him.
Then came the paternity suit itself, and this is where it gets really shocking. The court declared him the father, despite scientific evidence proving he wasn't.
It was a travesty. Blood tests proved conclusively he was not the father. His blood type was O, the mother's was A, and the child's was B. Genetically impossible.
But the court wouldn't accept the evidence.
California courts at the time deemed blood tests inadmissible. They prioritized the mother's accusation over science. So he was legally and financially required to support a child that wasn't his.
And in the middle of all this chaos, he gets married again to Una O'Neill, the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill. He's 54, she's 18.
The age difference caused another massive public outcry. Her father disowned her. And yet, this marriage proved to be his most stable and enduring relationship. It lasted until his death.
He later said the Barry trials had crippled his creativeness. But when he did return to filmmaking, his anger and bitterness were front and center.
Leading to Monsieur Verdoux in 1947, a black comedy about a serial killer.
He used the plot to launch a direct assault on capitalism.
His argument was that the world encourages mass killing through war and corporate greed. He said serial killing was just small-scale business.
And the U.S. public reaction was catastrophic.
Overwhelming hostility. He was booed at the premiere. Major boycotts. It was his first serious critical and commercial failure in America. Just outright public rejection.
And at the same time, the communist accusations fueled by Hoover are getting worse.
He was actively campaigning against the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, and calling himself a peacemonger. So political leaders started publicly calling for his deportation.
They said his life was detrimental to the moral fabric of America.
That's the quote. So the final blow came in 1952. He was on a ship sailing to the London premiere of his film Limelight.
And while he's in the middle of the ocean,
the Attorney General, James McGranery, revokes his re-entry permit. He demanded Chaplin submit to this humiliating interview about his politics and his morals if he ever wanted to come back.
So he had a choice: return and fight or walk away.
And he chose exile. He said he was fed up of America's insults and moral pomposity. He moved his family to Switzerland and cut his ties permanently.
His exile is just this profound example of how artistic freedom clashed with Cold War paranoia.
It showed that no matter how powerful you were, if you used that power to criticize the state would weaponize your personal life to bring you down.
So after his banishment, Chaplin settles into this quiet life in Switzerland at an estate called Manoir de Bonn, and his wife, Una, renounces her U.S. citizenship.
A profound gesture of support. Chaplin sold off his stock in United Artists, cutting his last professional ties to the country. He started calling himself an anarchist.
And his politics immediately show up in his next film, A King in New York,
which was a direct and angry satire on the country that exiled him. He cast himself as an exiled king and used it to parody HUAC, consumerism, and plastic surgery.
And he banned its American release.
He did. It wasn't shown there until 1973. His final film, A Countess from Hong Kong in 1967, was a romantic comedy with Marlon Brando and Sophia Loren.
But it just didn't work.
It was a box office failure and a critical disappointment. It hurt him deeply and effectively ended his directing career. But even as his output slowed, the artistic method that created his masterpieces, it's just astonishingly rigorous.
He's considered one of the earliest true cinematic auteurs. His control was absolute.
Directing, writing, producing, editing, composing, starring, everything. And that was essential because of his unique, almost chaotic method of creation.
He never shot from a completed script.
Never. Until The Great Dictator. He'd start with a vague premise, build the sets, and then just improvise gags on set until a narrative started to emerge.
Which sounds incredibly expensive and wasteful.
It was. It meant massive reshoots and astonishing amounts of wasted film. But because he was financing his own work, he could afford it.
And this leads to his legendary, almost pathological perfectionism.
It's insane. For a finished scene in The Kid, he shot up to 53 takes. For the 20-minute short The Immigrant, he shot 40,000 feet of film, enough for a feature-length epic.
That must have been draining on everyone.
It was. He described the process as sheer perseverance to the point of madness. He would often act out every single role for his cast, expecting them to imitate him precisely.
Beyond the visual mastery, there was the music. He taught himself piano, violin, and cello.
And from City Lights onwards, he composed the scores for all his films. It's remarkable, considering he couldn't read sheet music. He worked with arrangers, but he provided the musical imperative. Not a note was placed without his okay.
And some of those compositions, like Smile, have become cultural touchstones.
Absolutely. Smile from Modern Times, Eternally from Limelight. They live on completely outside of the films.
And it was his music that finally brought him competitive recognition from the country that had exiled him.
Yes. In 1973, he won his only competitive Oscar for Best Original Score for Limelight, which only became eligible after it was finally released in the U.S. in 1972.
By this point, U.S. sentiment had started to shift. The Academy saw a chance for reconciliation.
They offered him a second honorary award in 1972, and his return was this massive emotional event. He flew back to the U.S. for the first time in 20 years.
And at the Academy Awards, he received a 12-minute standing ovation.
The longest in Academy history. It was this profound, emotional climax to a lifetime of work and decades of persecution.
His final years were spent on his autobiography and rescoring his films. In 1975, Queen Elizabeth II knighted him.
He received the honor in a wheelchair. He died peacefully on Christmas Day, 1977, at the age of 88. And even then, the drama wasn't over.
His coffin was stolen.
Stolen for ransom, it was recovered, and he was reinterred in a reinforced concrete vault to make sure it never happened again. A bizarre cinematic end.
Looking back, his impact is just staggering. He's called arguably the single most important artist produced by the cinema.
And his greatest creation is the Tramp, cinema's most universal icon. The character's whole being was defined by his dignity, his refusal to be crushed by poverty. That mix of slapstick and pathos is what sets him apart.
I always think of that little gesture, lifting his hat in apology to a tree after bumping into it. That's the whole character right there.
Exactly. And that style set the benchmark. Federico Fellini called him a sort of Adam from whom we're all descended. His influence is everywhere.
Beyond the art, he also set a critical legal precedent that protects performers to this day. The 1928 lawsuit, Chaplin v. Amador.
This was a crucial case establishing the common law right of publicity. He sued an impersonator, and the court ruled that a performer's unique persona, the mustache, the hat, the cane, is legally protected from mimics trying to deceive the public.
So it was an early battle over brand integrity.
It laid the foundation for modern protections around merchandising and intellectual property for an artistic persona. His desire for control extended even to his own image.
Today, his legacy is carefully maintained. His final home in Switzerland is now the Chaplin's World Museum.
And 6 of his key films are preserved in the National Film Registry. A Minor Planet is named after him. And in a fascinating twist, the image of the tramp, the everyman, was ironically used by IBM in the 1980s to advertise personal computers.
That's the ultimate symbolic journey. From the Lambeth workhouse to an image so powerful it could sell the future.
The arc is complete.
So, what does this all mean? It means Chaplin achieved the ultimate creative and financial independence, making him the defining auteur of early cinema. But the cost of using that platform for overt political expression was profound. The government weaponized his personal life against him, forcing his permanent separation from the land that had crowned him king.
And yet Chaplin, the self-proclaimed anarchist who despised government and rules, was ultimately welcomed back and honored by the very establishments he spent his life satirizing. He was knighted by the Queen. He was embraced by the Academy.
It proves that true artistic influence eventually transcends any political banishment.
It does. You have to consider the staggering scale of that trajectory. The rebel was banished, only to return years later as an immortal monument. His genius just undeniable.
A profound thought on the enduring power of art over politics. Food for thought indeed. That concludes this deep dive into the extraordinary life of Charlie Chaplin.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to your company on the next deep dive.
Did I